I hate going into bars and seeing 18 different kinds of martini. You know, the eggnog martini and the, you know, apple crumble martini. You know, some people like espresso martinis. Some of these drinks are probably very good, but they don't really have anything to do with the essence of the martini, which is what I like to focus on, because it's a curious paradox with the martini that it's probably the simplest of the great cocktails, the classic cocktails. But it's also, because it's so simple, you're in danger of making it wrong if you don't know about the fundamentals of the drink, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. And I have to say that I feel particularly thrilled to be talking here about martinis, because standing right on the wall opposite me is a portrait of one of the most famous martini devotees of all time, Winston Churchill, whom I will quote disapprovingly in a little while. And not for his politics, I hasten to add. They were impeccable, we know. Okay, the essence of a martini. A martini is an aromatic cocktail. That means that the base spirit, in this case gin or sometimes vodka, is aromatized with a small quantity of something that's heavily flavored with herbal substances, namely vermouth. The second, is that the tube? I guess it is. That's impressive. I thought that might be the thundering feet of all the people leaving the event because they can't stand listening to me anymore. The second essence of a martini is that it is strong. It's mostly gin, and it's undiluted by ice, or it's barely diluted. So it's and you have to make it in a certain size. You can't. There's no such thing as a baby martini, you know, sharing plate martini. It's a strong drink, and the strength has to be respected. And the third aspect of its essence is that it is cold. Martini has to be very, very, very cold, or it's unpalatable. And the making it cold is one of the biggest technical challenges in making a martini. It's easy as long as you know how to do it, but if you don't do it right, then you're going to be drinking something that's really not very good. Okay, ingredients. A martini has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say five ingredients. The first, of course, is good gin. It has to be. It can't be 37.5% alcohol, which is the Gordon's strength, because that doesn't. Those extra 2.5% of alcohol of ABV add weight, sort of like body, to the drink. And if anything below that, and it's not going to be a proper martini. The second ingredient is that it has to have some vermouth in it. How much vermouth we will get onto in a little while, but it has to be good vermouth, but it doesn't have to be special vermouth. Some people use fancier things like Noyer Prat or Chambéry. Lots of good. There's some really great French vermouths that are much more characterful than say dry martini, but they're not necessary for a good martini. The bartenders that I know often say that they used to think that this or that fancy vermouth was the best for a martini. Now a lot of them are going back to just plain old dry martini, and that's what we're having tonight, as I think I mentioned. And I agree that that's all you need. It is all you need. So you don't need to spend a fortune on a bottle of vermouth. The third ingredient is that you need a good glass. It seems funny to describe a glass as an ingredient, but if you don't have the right one for your martini, you're not drinking a proper martini. We all know that the classic glass is the inverted cone on a stem, and that really is that's the only glass to use if you're drinking your martini straight up, which is the way we'll be drinking them tonight, and the way most people like to drink them. It's not the only way, and I'll say more about that in a little while. But it's the classic, the pure way. That's the sort of echt martini. The fourth ingredient is, and this is again a funny one to call an ingredient, is cold. and I mentioned the importance of cold before, but it can't be emphasized too much. You have to subtract every bit of heat, excuse me, that you can from that martini, from the drink before you serve it, before you drink it. So think of cold as one of the components of the drink. Excuse me. And the fifth ingredient is a garnish. And in a way, that's the easiest one to take care of, because we all know that it should be lemon, and we'll see more about that later on. So lemon. Actually, the man who taught me how to make martinis, the late Julian Pace of Weston, Connecticut, used orange, and that makes a really great martini. And in some ways, I prefer it to lemon, some of the time anyway. You could also have an olive, of course, and there's nothing wrong with an olive. In fact, when I'm in a bar, I often order them with olives just because I don't drink them that way at home. Now, could I have the lemons out here, please? The lemon zest? Because I'm going to go back to the subject of lemon shortly. Okay, choice of spirit. Now, we are very fortunate tonight in having a gin that's been donated to us very generously, called sorry, John? No, just one is fine. Called Number 3, which is made for or by Berry Brothers and Rudd, the great and very old, distinguished London wine merchant. This is an unusual gin in that it only has 6 botanicals. You all know what botanicals are? Yeah. Some have 9, some have 13. Some pride themselves on having 15 or 17. This is 6, so very unusual in that sense. And when we're finished tasting martinis, if anyone is still standing, there will be an opportunity to taste the gin neat, which I think is worth doing. But that's between you and your liver specialist. It's unusual also, Number 3, in that it's 48% alcohol, which is a lot for any gin, and it's more than it's higher than I usually recommend for martinis. 47, which is Tanqueray. That's as high as I usually go, but I'm willing to make an exception for this one because it's such great gin. Really, it's great gin. But I should say that it's also a very expensive gin. There are cheaper ones that are very good. In deference to our sponsor tonight, even though he's not here, I will not mention any of the other gins that I like, but anyone who wants to know later on can ask me. Okay, get that. A physicist said that making something cold isn't putting cold in it, it's taking heat out of it. And you take heat out of everything that you possibly can when you're making a martini. So, if possible, chill the glasses, though that's not as important as chilling the gin, as freezing the gin. It's not going to get frozen in an hour. You have to put it in 6 hours in advance. It takes a really long time. It never freezes, obviously. It just has to get as cold as possible. If you're making if ice is coming into contact with the martini at any point, use fresh ice. It can't have been sitting in the freezer and have that sort of crusting of snow on top. Stale ice has a bad taste, and the taste will get into the drink. So chill everything down, as cold as it can possibly be. Now, the big choice. Straight up, which is the classic, or on ice. And if you're making it straight up, do you chill the? Do you swirl some ice around in the gin to get it really, really, really cold? That's done in some bars where they don't keep the gin in the freezer. Making a martini without any ice contact is called making it naked, a naked martini. And some people, including a lot of bartenders, even though they know that a martini has to be very strong, they think that is just too strong, it's too much. So they will, even if the gin has been in the freezer, they'll swirl it in a glass with some ice for a few seconds and then strain it into the martini glass. Tonight we're having naked martinis, and I don't think that's necessarily the best way of doing it, but for logistical reasons, it's the only way we can do it. Now, the thing about a straight-up martini is that it's incredibly strong, obviously, and also there's nothing to keep it cold. So if you're a slow drinker like me, it really faces presents you with a big problem, because it's going to sit there. If you've got a 3-shot, a drink made with 75 mLs, 3 bar measures of gin, which is a huge drink, and it's got nothing chilling it down, and you sit there with it for 15 or 20 minutes, and it takes me a long time to drink a martini. It's going to get warm, and that's, as I said, just unacceptable. So if you are at home, you can make the Richard Ehrlich martini, which is a stemmed glass by preference. This would be just about okay. I sometimes use a Paris goblet. Keep the gin in the freezer as always, but fill the glass with ice and pour the gin on it, and drink it. When you drink it that way, when you have it that way, you can take 20 or 25 minutes to drink your drink, and the ice barely melts, and the gin warms up hardly at all. So that's a very good compromise if you are doing it at home. It also means you don't have to buy a martini glass, which can be inexpensive things. Okay, why don't we bring some? Where's Kate? Bring down bottles A. There are 3 of them. Right. The main thing we're doing tonight, apart from listening to me babble, is we're going to look at the next crucial martini question, which is how much gin to how much vermouth. What ratio is best? What's the best proportion? Now, does anyone here drink martinis with any regularity? What ratio do you like?
Every day,
What ratio do you like?
half and half.
Half and half, right?
My understanding was that it was best to pour the vermouth in the glass so that it just licks the glass, and pour out the vermouth and then put in the gin.
That's what you do. You can achieve the same effect by in some bars they keep the vermouth in a malt vinegar bottle, those little things, and they put 1 or 2 drops in. It's the same thing. Actually, that's even drier. If you like martinis very, very, very dry, that's the way to do it. But I mean, there are differences of opinions. Deta likes them 1 to 1. For me, that's too much vermouth. But increasingly, the more I drink martinis, the less I like those really, really, really dry ones. And dry in this case, as you probably know, means less vermouth. There are many. There are famous quotations from martini drinkers about how heroically dry they like their martinis. Winston Churchill said that when he was making a martini, he would pour the gin into a pitcher, glance briefly across the room at a bottle of vermouth, and then pour his drink into the glass. Noel Coward said he would pour in the gin, look briefly in the direction of Italy, and then start drinking. I mean, these are really fun. These are funny men. But their view of the martini, I think, is ridiculous. If you weren't meant to taste the vermouth, the drink wouldn't have vermouth in it. So even the drop or the atomizer or whatever, to me that's just pointlessly strong, and it doesn't taste as good. That's my opinion. So, what's the right ratio? A very dry martini in a bar might well be 10 to 1. Now I think that's too strong. For me, an extreme, apart from my friend Deta, an extreme would be 4 to 1. 4 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. At the other extreme would be 8 to 1, and in the middle I would put 6 to 1. So tonight, in a minute if my voice lasts, we're going to be tasting the same gin and the same vermouth. One is one is 6 to 1 and one is 8 to 1. Now, actually, because of the strength, the high ABV of this gin, the high alcohol of this gin, I've made them with slightly more vermouth, simply because that. When I was trying this out at home, I was tough research. I hated it second. I found that increasing the vermouth very, very slightly made it good. So this is actually 5.5 parts gin to 1 part. Yeah, 5.5 parts gin to 1 part vermouth, and 7.5 to 1 part vermouth. Okay. God, I was never good with numbers. So people talk about having a twist of lemon. This is not right. What you want to do is hold the lemon between your index finger and your thumb, both of them, and very quick, and position it over the drink, over the surface. Does anyone notice anything unusual about the gin? I mean, this is not a trick question, but do you notice that it tastes different from other gins?
It's not as aromatic.
Yeah, less perfumey, I would say.
Less juniper.
Less juniper, and that's interesting to me, because they say that juniper is obviously the main botanical, and the makers say that it has a very pronounced juniper character. But for me, it wasn't that way at all.
When I was using it for gin and tonic, I didn't think it did either. So.
Right.
It's quite different, isn't it?
How would anyone else John, what did
the first thing that I noticed was, in spite of its extreme cold when it first arrived, it had a terrific nose.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that thanks a lot to the lemon as well. It
was before the lemon.
I tasted it when I was doing this horrible night of research. The first thing I did was taste it neat. And there was one flavor that really dominated for me, and I wonder if anyone else finds anything very dominant about it. No? Okay. Sorry? Licorice.
Some kind.
Could well be, but for me it seems citrusy. Does anyone else find that?
Yes. Can you tell us why you think you can't make a small one? And that it has to be a certain size?
It's unnatural. To make it truly small, you would have to be using a medical pipette to measure the vermouth. You could manage, but making a small one would be. You couldn't find the right glass for it. I mean, a small one would be a single measure, 25 mLs, and then whatever proportion of vermouth you wanted. You would need a thimble-sized glass for it, and it just wouldn't look like a martini. I mean, that's it's a perfectly good question, but it just wouldn't look right. It wouldn't feel right in the glass.
Is this personally an instant where you would prefer orange in it because of the orange and grapefruit in it?
I had this at home with both lemon and orange, and I really thought the orange tasted better. If I had an orange here, I would make one with that and pass it around. The orange really does change the flavor of the drink dramatically. Try it sometime.
Have you tried it with other citrus fruits? Like cheddar or the citron, all those strange things. Bergamot.
Grapefruit. Yeah, there's grapefruit in there.
Bergamot. Just fascinating, wouldn't it?
In the gin, you mean?
Well, instead of the lemon.
Oh. No, for me it has to be lemon or orange or an olive. I wouldn't. People do use rose petal martinis,
Well, it's just other citrus fruits. I was wondering, no good. No good.
It would be worth trying, but I would always go back. I mean, if I could only have one for the rest of my life, it would definitely be lemon. Lemon is the best, I think.
Have you tried it with a civil orange?
No, I haven't. They often use civil orange in the that's the type of orange that they use as a botanical. Who liked the first one better? Hands up. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I like them both.
I like this one.
Who liked the second one better? Most people do. Keep them up, keep them up. And how many people have no strong preference either way? How many people hate them both? You're at the wrong workshop. I do this every year at the Abergavenny Food Festival, and I always ask, I always ask people, how they liked it, and one woman raised her hand and said, "Oh, well, I didn't really like it at all." And I said, "Well, why not?" And she said, "Well, I don't like gin." I said, like a vegetarian going to a steakhouse, you're in the wrong place. But anyway, most of, I think I counted 13 to 8, so some of you wimps didn't vote, but it's okay. So a pretty clear majority for the second one, and those who like the second one better, do they still like it? Yeah. Sure. Okay, well that's very interesting because most people like the stronger one.
Yeah.
And when I do this, which is the equivalent, I would say it is more or less an 8 to 1 martini, but 7.5 to 1. In Abergavenny, when I do this, but the overwhelming majority prefers the weaker one.
So where's your favourite, Richard?
My favorite.
Yeah.
I used to. I like the grand hotel bars where if there's a real tradition there, like at Duke's and the American bar at the Savoy. But now I think they're trading on their reputation.
Okay.
So the bar that I like best, even though the noise level is fairly horrendous, is Lab, which is short for London Academy of Bartending in Old Compton Street. They get the best bartenders around, and they like any good bartender, they'll talk to you. If somebody goes in and they don't know what they want, the bartender will say, "Well, do you like gin? Do you like vodka? Do you like rum?" And they sort of talk them through it. Do you like sweet drinks and so forth? And they will make you something that is just right for you. And the main thing is that the prices are reasonable. In America, you get 6-ounce martinis, which is
Okay. Well, so what would be the average?
well, in most places, in most places, the minimum would be 2 measures, 50 mLs.
Okay, well that's 100, which isn't that illegal?
No, 15 total.
Oh,
Yeah,
2 measures of 25.
Oh, sorry,
measures,
okay,
2 measures,
right,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but at Lab, I mean, in most bars they just free pour. They don't measure. There's a new generation of cocktail bars now, some of which are very, very good. A lot of them are very experimental, which some people like, and I admire them. They're trying to do new things, and some of them are incredibly serious. I mean, I had a conversation. There's a place called Pearl, P-U-R-L. In Marylebone, is it Crawford Street? I can't remember.
Blandford Street.
Blandford Street.
Yeah.
Sort of speakeasy thing. The experimental stuff. I'm not all that crazy about it. But I like classic cocktails. If you like vodka and you want really high quality at a reasonable price, and especially when it's on special offer, Russian standard vodka is the one to buy. And bartenders love it, and they love it because it's good and it's good. The olive should be green. It should not have been in oil. Sorry? Yes, that's a very good one. Yeah. The standard way of doing it is to use one stuffed with red peppers. But in some really good bars, especially in, I guess I've seen this more in the United States, which means New York and its environs, more than here. No, but I've seen it here too. They've started using really good olives, like Cerignola from Italy, and that adds a great deal of complexity. And a little bit extra expense for them, but it's very little trouble, and it's worth doing at home if you have access to really good olives. The James Bond Martini is made with equal measures of gin and vodka, and the vermouth used is not really a vermouth at all. It's an aromatized wine called Lillet. Does anyone know? Yeah. Which I love. I adore. I think it's such a great drink. But it's quite strong. In flavor, it's got a lot of sweetness in it, and I think it's perfectly wrong for a martini.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Anybody else like small number B? Let's B.
B, yes, please. And of course, the famous thing is that it's shaken, not stirred. When you shake the drink, you're melting a lot of the ice. So that concentrated, intense martini strength is being excessively diluted, and I think it's just a huge mistake. And I wish Ian Fleming hadn't had his great hero order this peculiar martini. There are good variations on the martini. If you use a cocktail onion as the garnish, you're making a Gibson. A Gibson is a really fantastic drink. If you use an olive and you put in a little bit of the brine from the olive, it's called a dirty martini, and that too is a really good drink.
Yeah, I was told that if it's shaken, not stirred, it goes a bit cloudy, and it's called a Bradford. Has anyone else heard that, or I just invented it? So I think that someone told me.
We're talking about Gin and It.
Yeah.
Gin and It, the great new drinks magazine.
Someone told me once that if you shake a martini and not stir it, it goes a bit cloudy.
It's cloudy,
And it's called a Bradford because it's always cloudy in Bradford. Has no one else heard that?
I don't know about the Bradford name, but I do know that it goes cloudy, and a martini has to be perfectly translucent.
Yeah.
If you can't see through it, part of the pleasure of drinking it is gone. So Commander Bond.
So long.
He did us wrong. A final martini variation, which you may think is really insane, but is actually very good, is called a smoky martini. And you make the martini in the usual way, but then put in a few drops of a very peaty Islay single malt.
Oh my God!
And I've had one. I think it might have been invented by the bartender who made it for me, but I'm not sure.
Sorry if I missed it, but which goes in first, the martini or the?
Always the gin.
The gin.
Yeah.
The gin goes in first, and then you put the martini in and just briefly stir it.
Yeah.
And the lemon always goes in last.
Yeah.
Yes, and now at some bars, including Duke's, they don't. Well, they may give a very quick stir at Duke's, and I mean a really quick one, because you want to having as much as possible of the oil droplet stay on the surface means that you get that lovely aroma. So you're just a quick stir to get a little bit of the oil into the body of the drink, have the rest floating on the.
So if you were making one at home, you'd stir it with ice.
That's the way. Yes, that's the way I do it. I would fill this glass with ice, and then pour in the gin, drop on the vermouth, and when I'm making them at home, I make them at about 6 to 1. On the whole, that's my standard.
And keep the ice in it.
And keep the ice in it, yeah, and that keeps the drink for a very long time, because it can take me half an hour to drink a martini. I'm a slow eater and a slow drinker.
2 minutes.
Richard, what's your view on freezing glasses?
It's no bad thing. Obviously, it helps keep the drink colder for longer, but in plenty of great bars, they don't freeze the glasses. Freezing the gin is much more important, I would say. Also, if you freeze the glasses, you can get a kind of frost on the outside, and then you can't see through the drink. So some of the aesthetic pleasure.
What about freezing the room?
Nature's doing that for us. There's a lot of really great vodka around that costs twice as much as it should.
Yeah.
Russian Standard is a really top-class vodka that costs exactly what it should, which is not very much. And I think it's worth every penny. And a lot of the fancier vodkas, I won't mention any by name. I mean, they're fantastic vodkas, but they don't need to sell for as much as they do.
Where did the name come from?
On the temple.
Martini. The long answer is that it's believed to have originated in a drink called a Martinez, made in California in the late 19th century, and that was probably made with gin and some form of wine. But no one's quite sure what the wine is.
In those days,
USA. Yeah. The Martini is an American invention.
I thought it was a fortified one. Is it not like a sweet vermouth? Is that?
People say different things. Probably it was fortified in some way because it would have kept better.
Yeah.
Can I ask a kind of cheeky question? Because I don't know very much about sort of these kind of things. Do you think the younger generation, because I work with youth, is going to understand, or are they going to keep it up with all these alcohol pops and all this kind of rubbish stuff that they're drinking? Are they? Is this going to die because are the cocktail bars going to survive on good stuff, or are they just going to end up on the bad stuff and the crap and the sugar? And it's the sugar that is going to ultimately kill them.
No, I don't think it will. I mean, I have children of drinking age myself, and they've never drunk alcohol pops because they've been brought up around real alcohol, as it were.
When did gin become sexy? Because in Hogarth's day, it was a truly bad drink. Mother's ruin. At what stage did it become acceptable?
In some places, it's still kind of unacceptable. It's still regarded as the drunkard's drink, and you know that sort of thing. But
bad quality then, was it?
But Hogarth
didn't have number 3.
Hogarth's painting was paid for by the brewery in Chiswick to do with the taxes on beer, and they weren't on gin, if I remember right from the workshop.
I believe that's
something
right.
like that. Yeah. So they were propaganda of the day, basically.
Wow. Yeah, and you know, remember in those days, beer was considered a healthy drink because it was you couldn't drink the water. To end more or less on a lighter note, my favorite thing that's ever been said about martinis is a little short poem by Dorothy Parker, who surely drank more martinis than were good for her. She said, I'd like to have a martini, 2 at the very most. After 3, I'm under the table. After 4, I'm under my host.